I stood in our kitchen that Tuesday morning, watching my mother hang up the phone with tears streaming down her face. She turned to me, her voice shaking as she delivered the news that would change everything. My 18th birthday party, planned for months, was canceled. Emma, my 15-year-old sister, had thrown another one of her spectacular tantrums about cheerleading tryouts and needed immediate family support. The community center booking, the friends Id invited, my girlfriend Sarah's decorating plans, the milestone Id waited years to celebrate, all gone. For Emma's drama. Again, I should have seen this coming. The disbelief hit me first, like a physical punch to the chest. Then came that familiar, sinking resignation that I'd felt countless times before. This was just how things worked in the Collins household. Emma needed something, so everything else got pushed aside. I thought about the past 3 months Id spent planning this party. Id worked extra shifts at the grocery store to save up the $250 for the community center rental. Sarah had spent weekends with me, picking out decorations, planning the playlist, coordinating with my friends Marcus and Tyler about bringing their sound equipment. Wed even ordered a custom cake from the bakery downtown, one shaped like a guitar because I'd been teaching myself to play. My mother, Patricia, stood there wringing her hands, explaining through her tears how Emma had suffered what she called an anxiety attack about next week's cheerleading tryouts. According to Patricia, Emma had been hyperventilating and couldn't stop crying about how she might embarrass herself in front of the other girls. The family needed to rally around her during this crisis. My father, Robert, emerged from his home office, still in his work clothes from his construction job. He wouldn't meet my eyes as he mumbled his agreement with Patricia's decision. He kept saying things like it was the right choice for the family and that I was mature enough to understand. His weak support of the cancellation felt like another betrayal stacked on top of the first one. From upstairs, I could hear Emma's dramatically loud sobbing. She was performing for the whole neighborhood, making sure everyone knew about her suffering. The sound carried through the thin walls of our split-level house, probably reaching the Hendersons next door and the Martinez family across the street. I had to call 6 friends to cancel their plans. Marcus was shocked into silence when I told him. Tyler kept asking if I was joking. My girlfriend Sarah just went quiet for a long moment before whispering that she was so sorry. Shed already wrapped my present, she said, a vintage guitar pick holder Shed found at an antique shop. The disappointment in her voice made my chest ache worse than my own feelings. As I packed away the decorations Wed bought, shoving the streamers and balloons back into their bags, I overheard something that stopped me cold. Patricia was on the phone in the living room, and her voice had completely changed. Gone were the tears and worry. She was laughing. "Linda, you won't believe how perfectly this worked out," she was saying to her sister. "Now we can use that party money for Emma's cheerleading camp registration. It's due today, and it's $500. We were scrambling to figure out how to pay for it." I stood frozen behind the kitchen doorway, holding a bag of deflated balloons, as the truth crashed over me. This wasn't about Emma's anxiety. This wasn't about family crisis or emotional support. This was about money. They had calculated that Emma's cheerleading camp was more important than my birthday, and they'd used her dramatics as cover for a financial decision. Patricia continued chatting with Linda, explaining how Emma had been so worried about missing the camp registration deadline. Apparently, all the popular girls were going, and Emma couldn't bear to be left out. The anxiety attack had been real enough, but it wasn't about tryouts. It was about potentially missing this expensive camp. My hands started shaking as I processed what I'd just heard. 17 years of putting Emma first suddenly made sense in a new, horrible way. Every time they'd chosen her needs over mine, every time they'd asked me to be the understanding one, the mature one, the one who didn't need as much attention, it had all been about resource allocation. Emma was the investment. I was the reliable one who would be fine with whatever scraps remained. The guitar pick holder Sarah had bought me sat on my dresser upstairs. The friends Hod rearranged their weekend plans for my party were probably wondering what kind of family cancels an 18th birthday celebration. The cake order would have to be canceled, probably too late to get our deposit back. But what hurt most was realizing that my parents saw me as someone whose feelings were disposable when it mattered. They'd counted on my understanding, my maturity, my willingness to step aside. They'd counted on me being the good son who never caused problems. As Patricia wrapped up her call with Linda, still laughing about how everything had worked out, I made a decision that would change all our lives. If they wanted to see how well their family functioned when the reliable one stepped aside, I was going to give them that chance. That evening, I sat in my bedroom staring at the walls covered with participation certificates and honor roll awards. 17 years of being the good kid. And what did I have to show for it? A canceled birthday party, and the growing realization that my place in this family was as Emma's backup system. I started thinking about all the times Emma had come first. When I was 12 and Emma was 9. I'd missed my middle school graduation ceremony because Emma had a dance recital the same evening. Patricia said the recital was more important because Emma had worked so hard and graduation was just a formality. When I turned 16, instead of getting driving lessons like we'd planned, they sold my grandfather's old Honda Civic to pay for Emma's summer theater camp. Emma decided she wanted to be an actress that year. The car would have been mine, but Emma's dreams mattered more. 2 years ago, when Emma decided she needed a bigger bedroom for all her cheerleading equipment, they moved me out of the larger room I'd had since childhood. Emma got the space, and I got moved to what used to be the guest room. It was half the size, with one small window and barely enough room for my bed and desk. But Emma needed space for her practice mats and trophy shelves. Sarah had noticed these patterns during the months we'd been dating. She never said much, but I could see it in her eyes when she witnessed these family dynamics. Last week, when she came over to help plan the party decorations, Emma had burst into the room demanding that we move our planning session because she needed quiet for a phone call with her friends. Patricia immediately told us to go work in the kitchen instead. Sarah had given me this look, like she couldn't believe what she'd just witnessed. After my birthday cancellation, Sarah came over the next evening. We sat on the front porch swing, and she finally spoke up about what she'd been observing. "Brayden, this isn't normal," she said quietly. "Families don't work this way. It's just how it's always been," I replied. But even as I said it, I knew how weak that sounded. "Your 18th birthday, Brayden. That's supposed to be huge. And they canceled it for cheerleading camp money." Sarah shook her head. "My parents would never do that to my brother." She was right, and I knew it. I'd seen how other families worked. Marcus' parents had thrown him a surprise party for his 18th. Tyler's family had taken him on a weekend camping trip. Normal families celebrated these milestones. That night, I started researching apartments online, small efficiency units, studio spaces, anything I could afford on my grocery store salary. I looked into student financial aid, wondering if I could still apply for college scholarships, even though I'd missed most of the deadlines while assuming my family would help with expenses. The next weekend, while Patricia and Robert took Emma shopping for new cheerleading shoes, I visited my grandfather Joe. He lived in a retirement community about 20 minutes away, and had always been the one person in our extended family who seemed to see things clearly. Grandpa Joe listened while I explained the birthday cancellation and everything that had led up to it. He didn't interrupt, just nodded and occasionally shook his head. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "Your grandmother and I worried about this," he finally said. "We could see how Patricia and Robert were raising you kids differently. Emma got praised for breathing, while you got expected to be perfect." He told me stories I'd never heard before. How Head tried to talk to my parents about their favoritism when Emma and I were younger. How Patricia had dismissed his concerns, saying that Emma needed more support because she was more sensitive. How Robert had simply changed the subject whenever Grandpa Joe brought it up. "You know that college fund we set up for you when you were born?" Grandpa Joe asked. "I've been adding to it every year. Birthday money, Christmas money, summer job contributions when you started working. There should be about $8,000 in there now, plus whatever you've added from your own savings." I felt a chill run down my spine. "Grandpa, I need to tell you something." The next day, I helped Patricia organize tax documents for their accountant appointment. Shed asked me to sort through the bank statements and receipts while she dealt with Emma's latest crisis. Emma had decided she hated her current hairstyle and needed an emergency salon appointment before school pictures. As I sorted through the paperwork, I found statements for the college savings account. My heart sank as I traced the withdrawals over the past 2 years. March of last year, $1,500 withdrawn the same day Emma's theater camp deposit was due. June, $2,000 withdrawn when Emma decided she needed a new laptop for her social media projects. August, $1,800 for Emma's back-to-school shopping spree. December, $2,500 for Emma's winter formal dress and the after-party she wanted to host at our house. The total was over $12,000. My entire future, drained away for Emma's wants and whims. They hadn't just canceled my birthday party. They'd stolen my ability to pay for college. I took photos of every statement with my phone. Then I sat in my cramped bedroom, looking at the evidence of my parents' betrayal, and made the decision that would change everything. I wasn't going to confront them. I wasn't going to cause a scene or demand explanations. I was going to quietly remove myself from the equation and let them discover what their family looked like without their reliable backup son. If Emma was their priority, they could figure out how to manage their lives around her needs without using me as their safety net. If my feelings and my future were disposable, then they could learn to function without the person they'd been disposing of. That weekend, I started moving my belongings out of the house, one bag at a time, while they were distracted with Emma's activities. Id found a room to rent from Mr. Peterson, who owned the hardware store where Id just gotten a second part-time job. He had a small apartment above his garage and was happy to rent it to a responsible kid who needed a quiet place to study. Nobody noticed my things disappearing because nobody paid attention to what I was doing anymore. Their focus was entirely absorbed by Emma's needs, Emma's schedule, Emma's problems. I was just background noise in my own family. But they were about to discover that background noise could leave quite an echo when it stopped. Over the next 2 weeks, I systematically moved my life out of my parents' house. I waited for moments when they were busy with Emma's activities, which was most of the time. Patricia spent her afternoons driving Emma to cheerleading practice, private coaching sessions, and various social events. Robert worked late most nights to keep up with his construction projects. They were always rushing around, managing Emma's complicated schedule, so they never noticed my gradual disappearance. My friend Marcus helped me move the larger items, like my desk and dresser. We did it during school hours when the house was empty. Marcus kept asking if I was sure about this decision, but he could see Id thought it through. Had witnessed enough family dinners at our house to understand why I needed to get out. Id printed copies of all those bank statements showing the college fund theft. I locked them in a small fireproof box that I kept in my new room above Mr. Peterson's garage. Evidence of what they'd done, in case I ever needed to prove it. Not for revenge, but for my own clarity. Sometimes when you're raised in dysfunction, you start to doubt your own perceptions. The apartment was perfect for my needs. One room with a kitchenette, a small bathroom, and enough space for my bed, desk, and guitar. Mr. Peterson charged me only $300 a month, which included utilities. He said he liked having a responsible young person around and that I could work off some of the rent by helping with store maintenance. During these 2 weeks of preparation, I watched my family's dynamics more carefully than ever before. Emma had started complaining about her homework load, expecting me to help her with algebra like I'd been doing since middle school. When I said I was busy, she went crying to Patricia about how stressed she was. Patricia immediately demanded that I make time to tutor Emma because family came first. I smiled and nodded, then spent that evening moving more of my belongings to the apartment. Emma had also begun asking me to drive her places when Patricia wasn't available. Since I'd gotten my license 2 years ago, I'd become Emma's unofficial chauffeur for shopping trips and friend visits. When I started declining these requests, Emma accused me of being selfish and ran to Robert. He gave me a lecture about helping family members and pulling my weight around the house. I apologized and promised to do better, then used the time I would have spent driving Emma around to research college financial aid applications. Sarah understood what I was planning, though she worried about the consequences. "They're going to freak out when they realize you're gone," she warned. "Maybe," I said, "but they might not notice for a while." She thought I was being too pessimistic about my own family, but I knew them better than she did. My parents had trained themselves not to see me unless they needed something from me. My last week in that house, I paid attention to every interaction, memorizing what I was leaving behind. Dinner conversations entirely focused on Emma's day, her problems, her plans. Patricia asking me to help with laundry while Emma watched television. Robert requesting that I clean the garage while Emma painted her nails. Normal family life. except one person was carrying all the responsibility while another person received all the attention. On my final Sunday evening, we had what I knew would be our last family dinner together for a long time. Emma complained about her cheerleading coach being too demanding. Patricia sympathized and promised to call the school if the coach didn't ease up. Robert suggested they find Emma a private coach who would be more understanding of her sensitive nature. I listened to them plan Emma's future while sitting invisible at the same table. Nobody asked about my college applications or my work schedule or whether I needed anything. I was furniture that occasionally helped with chores. That night, I wrote my goodbye letter. Nothing dramatic or accusatory. Just a simple explanation that I was 18 now and ready to live independently. I thanked them for raising me and told them I loved them. I said I hoped they would be happy and that I would check in with them after I got settled. I left the letter on my pillow, along with my house key. Through Sarah, whose mother worked in the school district office, I'd learned something interesting about Emma's future plans. Emma had been secretly accepted to Westfield Academy, an expensive private college 3 hours away. The tuition was $35,000 per year. Emma hadn't told our parents about the acceptance yet because she was waiting for the right moment to spring it on them. She had been bragging to her friends about how she was going to convince Patricia and Robert that she deserved this opportunity. It also discovered through Mr. Peterson, who knew everyone in our small town, that Robert's construction business was struggling more than he'd let on. 2 major clients had backed out of projects recently, leaving Robert with significant debt and no way to pay his employees. He'd been putting on a brave face at home, but the stress was eating him alive. My departure would remove several sources of financial relief that my parents had been counting on without realizing it. My part-time job contributions to household expenses, my unpaid help with yard work and house maintenance that would otherwise cost them money, my free tutoring and transportation services for Emma, which would now require paid alternatives. Most importantly, my departure would force them to see Emma's demands and expectations clearly, without me there to quietly meet them. They'd been using me as a buffer between Emma's needs and their own limitations. Now they'd have to deal with her directly. I felt a mixture of anticipation and dread as I imagined their reactions. Part of me hoped they'd realize what they'd lost and make changes. Part of me expected them to simply find new ways to enable Emma's selfishness, but either way, I wouldn't be there to participate in the dysfunction anymore. On Monday morning, I woke up in my new apartment for the first time. The silence was incredible. No Emma crying about her hair or her clothes. No Patricia frantically orchestrating everyone's schedules around Emma's needs. No Robert avoiding conflict by staying late at work. Just quiet, peaceful silence where I could think my own thoughts and plan my own future. Around 8:30, my phone started ringing. Patricia's first call came at 8:45, just as I was getting ready to leave for my shift at Mr. Peterson's hardware store. Her voice was high and panicked. "Braden, where are you? Your bed wasn't slept in, and there's this strange letter on your pillow. This isn't funny. Come home right now." I let the call go to voicemail. Then came Robert's call at 9:15. "Son, I don't know what this is about, but you need to come home and talk to us like an adult. Running away doesn't solve anything." Emma texted me around 10, apparently just realizing I wasn't there to drive her to school. "Where are you? Mom is freaking out and I need a ride." By noon, I had 17 missed calls. I turned my phone to silent and focused on learning the inventory system at the hardware store. Mr. Peterson could see I was dealing with family drama, so he kept me busy with tasks in the back room where I could have some peace. Around 3 o'clock, Patricia showed up at the hardware store. She marched through the front door in her yoga clothes, hair disheveled, eyes red from crying. Several customers turned to stare as she demanded to see me. Mr. Peterson calmly directed her to wait while he got me from the stockroom. I could hear her voice rising as she argued with him about family emergencies and unacceptable behavior from ungrateful children. When I came to the front, Patricia immediately launched into a speech about how worried they'd been, how irresponsible I was being, and how I needed to stop this nonsense and come home immediately. She was loud enough that everyone in the store could hear her talking about our private family business. "Mom," I said quietly, "I left you a letter explaining everything. I'm 18. I'm living independently now. You're living in some apartment." she shrieked. Without telling us? What will people think? Mr. Peterson stepped forward. Mom, I think this conversation would be better held privately. Perhaps you could arrange to meet your son after his work shift. Patricia glared at him like he'd personally stolen me from her. He has responsibilities at home. His sister needs him. That phrase hung in the air. His sister needs him, not we miss him, or we love him, or we want him to be part of the family. Emma needs him. I understand, I said. But Emma will figure out how to manage without me. Patricia's face went through several different expressions as she processed this. Then she started crying again, right there in front of the fertilizer display and the retired farmers who came in every afternoon to chat with Mr. Peterson. You're breaking up our family, she sobbed. Emma is devastated. She doesn't understand why you're abandoning her. I felt a stab of guilt at that. Despite everything, Emma was still my little sister. But I also knew that Emma's devastation was probably more about losing her personal assistant than missing her brother. After Patricia left, promising to send Robert to talk sense into me, the afternoon customers were buzzing with curiosity. Mr. Peterson just shrugged and said families work things out in their own time. He gave me the evening off to deal with whatever came next. Robert showed up at my apartment at 6:30. I could see him through the window, sitting in his truck for several minutes before getting out. He looked exhausted in a way that went beyond physical tiredness. Can we talk? He asked when I opened the door. We sat on the small porch outside my apartment. Robert tried the man-to-man approach, explaining how families stick together during difficult times and how running away from problems never solved anything. He talked about responsibility and maturity and setting a good example for Emma. Dad, I finally interrupted. When's the last time anyone in our family asked what I needed? He looked confused by the question. You never said you needed anything. Because I learned that my needs weren't as important as Emma's. Robert was quiet for a long moment. That's not true. When's my birthday, Dad? October 15th. When's Emma's? January 22nd. Which birthday party got canceled this year? He didn't have an answer for that. After Robert left, I called Sarah. She came over with Chinese takeout and we talked about everything that had happened. She was worried about me but also proud that I'd finally stood up for myself. They'll figure it out, she said. Maybe this is what they need to see how they've been treating you. Over the next few days, the calls and texts continued. Patricia alternated between anger, guilt, and fake medical emergencies. She claimed she was having chest pains from stress and that I was responsible if anything happened to her. Emma sent dozens of texts about how much she missed me, but most of them ended with requests for me to come help her with something. Robert tried a different approach, showing up at the hardware store to offer me a job with his construction crew. Better pay than retail, he said, and a chance to learn a trade. But working for Robert would mean going back into their sphere of control, and I knew it. 3 weeks after Eid moved out, Sarah's mother mentioned something interesting. Patricia had been calling the school, demanding to know what resources were available for Emma's struggling grades. Apparently, without my tutoring help, Emma was failing algebra, and her English grades had dropped to a D average. Around the same time, I noticed Robert's truck parked outside the bank on my lunch break. Through the window, I could see him in what looked like a very serious conversation with a loan officer. His body language suggested the conversation wasn't going well. Then Emma made a mistake that changed everything. She decided she needed professional help dealing with the trauma of my departure. Emma convinced Patricia and Robert that my leaving had traumatized her so severely that she needed therapy. She claimed she was having anxiety attacks and couldn't concentrate on schoolwork because she missed me so much. Patricia, already feeling guilty about the family breakdown, immediately agreed to find Emma a therapist. Dr. Margaret Williams had been practicing family therapy in our town for 15 years. She'd seen every kind of dysfunction and manipulation, so she wasn't easily fooled by dramatic performances. Emma's first session apparently went well enough. She told Dr. Williams about feeling abandoned by her brother and worried about her family falling apart. But Dr. Williams asked probing questions that Emma hadn't expected. Tell me about your relationship with Braden before he moved out. He was always there for me, Emma said. He helped with everything. Can you give me specific examples? As Emma listed all the ways I'd supported her, Dr. Williams started noticing a pattern. Emma described a brother who functioned more like a personal assistant than a sibling. Someone who did her homework, drove her places, solved her problems, and never asked for anything in return. "How did you support Braden?" Dr. Williams asked. Emma was confused by the question. Support him how? He never needed support. He was the responsible one. After individual sessions with Emma, Dr. Williams requested family sessions. That's when things got interesting. During their first family session, Dr. Williams asked each person to describe their role in the family. Patricia explained how she managed everyone's schedules and made sure Emma's needs were met. Robert talked about providing financially and supporting Patricia's decisions. Emma described herself as the one who needed taking care of because she was more sensitive. "What was Braden's role?" Dr. Williams asked. "They all described me as the helper, the responsible one, the one who took care of things so everyone else could focus on more important matters." "Did anyone take care of Braden's needs?" Long silence. Dr. Williams started asking more pointed questions. When had the family last celebrated one of Braden's achievements? When had they asked about his goals, his problems, his feelings? When had they prioritized his needs over Emma's? During their third session, Emma made the comment that revealed everything. Patricia was explaining how worried she was about me living alone, how she couldn't understand why I would abandon my family. Dr. Williams listened patiently, then asked Emma how she felt about the situation. "I just don't understand why Braden is being so selfish," Emma said. "He knows I need help with things. He knows Mom and Dad are stressed about money. He should come home and stop causing problems." "What about the money from his college fund that your parents used for your activities?" Dr. Williams asked. The room went dead silent. Emma's eyes went wide, and she looked at Patricia and Robert like she'd been caught in a trap. "I don't know what you mean," Emma said, but her voice was shaky. Dr. Williams had clearly done her homework. Braden mentioned that his college savings had been spent on cheerleading camps and other activities. "Were you aware of this?" Emma tried to deny knowing anything, but Dr. Williams pressed gently. Finally, Emma cracked. "He doesn't need college anyway," she blurted out. "He's good at fixing things and working with his hands. I'm the one with academic potential. The money was better spent on my future." Patricia and Robert stared at their daughter in shock. They'd never heard her express such calculated selfishness so directly. But Emma wasn't finished. The words just kept coming, like a dam had burst. "Everyone knows I'm the special one in the family. Braden is just ordinary. He doesn't have talents like mine, and he doesn't need as much support. It makes sense that the family resources should go to the person who can do the most with them." Dr. Williams let Emma keep talking, watching Patricia and Robert's faces as their daughter revealed her true personality. "Besides, Braden likes helping people. He's good at it. Why would we take that away from him by making him focus on his own stuff?" When Emma finally stopped talking, Dr. Williams asked a simple question. "Emma, do you love your brother?" "Of course I do," Emma said immediately. "That's why he should come home. I miss having him around to help me." "You miss having him help you, or you miss him?" Emma couldn't answer that question, and everyone in the room knew it. Meanwhile, my new life was developing nicely. I'd enrolled in community college classes for the spring semester, planning to study business administration. My grades at the hardware store had impressed Mr. Peterson enough that he was teaching me about ordering, customer service, and basic business operations. Sarah and I had grown closer through this whole experience. She'd seen me become more confident and self-assured as I built my independent life. But the biggest surprise came when I discovered what had really been happening behind the scenes of Emma's perfect life. Sarah's mother, who worked in the school administration, mentioned something strange during a family dinner I was invited to. Emma's college acceptance letter to Westfield Academy had raised some red flags in the guidance counselor's office. The letter didn't match the official format they'd seen from that school before, and some of the language seemed off. When they contacted Westfield Academy directly, they discovered that Emma had never been accepted there. In fact, she'd never even completed an application. The acceptance letter was a complete fabrication, but that wasn't the only lie Emma had been living. Remember her boyfriend Jake, the football player that Patricia and Robert had been giving money to for dates? I'd always thought there was something odd about that relationship. since I never saw them together and Jake never came to the house. Through Marcus, who knew everyone at our high school, I learned the truth. Jake was gay and had been out to his close friends for over a year. Had never dated Emma or any girl. Emma had been paying him $50 a month to pretend to be her boyfriend when she was around our parents. All the date money Patricia and Robert had been giving Emma, thinking they were funding her social life, had been going directly into Emma's personal savings account. She'd been pocketing hundreds of dollars while maintaining the illusion of having an active dating life. When Dr. Williams learned about these deceptions during a follow-up session, she realized she was dealing with a much deeper problem than family dysfunction. Emma had been systematically lying and manipulating everyone around her to maintain her position as the family's golden child. The therapist asked Emma to explain the fake college acceptance and the fake boyfriend. Under pressure, Emma finally broke down and admitted everything. She had been terrified that her parents would discover she was actually failing most of her classes and had no real prospects for college. She had been living in constant fear that they'd realize their perfect daughter was a fraud. The golden child mask finally slipped completely when Emma screamed at Dr. Williams that none of this was fair, that everything should be about her, and that Braden was ruining her life by making everyone question things. Patricia and Robert sat in stunned silence as their daughter revealed herself to be someone they didn't recognize. The sweet, sensitive, talented girl they'd been protecting and prioritizing was actually a calculated manipulator who'd been playing them against their son for years. That session ended with Dr. Williams recommending intensive individual therapy for Emma and suggesting that Patricia and Robert examine their own role in creating these family dynamics. She also recommended that they reach out to me, not to demand my return, but to apologize for the damage they'd caused. But Emma had one more revelation that would shatter their understanding completely. Dr. Williams scheduled an emergency family session after Emma's breakdown. Patricia and Robert arrived looking like they hadn't slept in days. Emma came in defiant, angry that her lies had been exposed, but Dr. Williams had made it clear that honesty was the only way forward. Emma, Dr. Williams said gently, "Your parents need to understand the full extent of what's been happening. This is your chance to tell the truth about everything." What came out during that session was worse than anyone had imagined. Emma admitted that she'd been sabotaging my achievements for years. When I made honor roll in 10th grade, Shed told Patricia that the teachers were just being easy on me because they felt sorry for me. When I got accepted to the state university with a partial scholarship, Shed intercepted the acceptance letter from the mail and thrown it away, then told our parents that I'd decided college wasn't for me. "You did what?" Patricia whispered. Emma explained how Shed been systematically undermining my relationships and opportunities. Shed convinced my first girlfriend, Jessica, that I was cheating on her by showing her fake text messages Shed created. Shed told my guidance counselor that I was having family problems and couldn't handle the stress of advanced classes, so Head moved me to easier courses. Shed even called my manager at the grocery store once, pretending to be Patricia, and said that I needed to reduce my hours because of family obligations. "Why?" Robert asked, his voice barely audible. "Why would you do this to your brother?" Emma's answer revealed the depth of her manipulation. She'd been jealous of my natural responsibility and the way people genuinely liked me. Teachers remembered my name. Employers trusted me. Friends came to me for advice. Emma got attention through drama and demands, but I got respect through character, and she couldn't stand it. "Everyone always said how proud they were of Braden," she said, tears streaming down her face. "How responsible he was, how trustworthy, how kind. Nobody ever said those things about me unless I made them feel sorry for me first." She'd been using manipulation to stay the baby of the family because she was terrified of being expected to be independent and capable like me. Every time I succeeded at something, it raised the bar for what might be expected of her. So Shed worked to keep me from succeeding while creating crises that required her to be taken care of. The college fund theft had been her idea. Shed suggested to Patricia and Robert that I didn't really need college money because I was good with my hands and could make a living without a degree. Shed been the one pushing for the expensive camps and activities, knowing that the money had to come from somewhere. The birthday party. Patricia said suddenly, "You knew about the registration deadline for cheerleading camp weeks before Braden's birthday." Emma nodded. Shed planned the anxiety attack timing perfectly. knowing that Patricia and Robert would choose her crisis over my celebration. She'd done it before with my graduation, my 16th birthday, and countless other occasions. Dr. Williams asked the question that changed everything. Emma, do you understand that Braden is a separate person with his own needs, goals, and feelings? Emma's answer was chilling in its honesty. I know he is. But I need more than he does. I've always needed more, and he's good at giving people what they need. So it made sense. Shed genuinely believed that I existed to support her, that my role in the family was to be her foundation so she could shine. The idea that I might have my own dreams and needs that conflicted with hers had never seriously occurred to her. Patricia started crying as she realized what they'd enabled. Robert asked Dr. Williams how they could fix this, how they could repair the damage they'd done to both of their children. But Emma wasn't finished with her revelations. Besides, she said, Braden always forgave me. He never stayed mad or fought back, so I knew he was okay with it. That statement hung in the air like poison. Emma had mistaken my conflict avoidance and unconditional love for consent to be mistreated. Shed interpreted my maturity as permission to take advantage of me. Dr. Williams spent the next hour helping Patricia and Robert understand how they'd created this dynamic. Every time they'd asked me to be understanding about Emma's behavior, they'd taught Emma that her actions had no consequences. Every time they'd praised me for being the mature one who didn't cause problems, they'd reinforced Emma's belief that I didn't need consideration. They'd accidentally trained Emma to be selfish and me to be invisible. What do we do now? Patricia asked. Dr. Williams was clear about the steps needed. Emma required intensive therapy to address her narcissistic manipulation patterns. Patricia and Robert needed to examine their own enabling behaviors and learn how to set appropriate boundaries. And they needed to reach out to me with a genuine apology that didn't expect anything in return. But first, Dr. Williams said, you need to understand that Braden may not forgive you. He may not want a relationship with this family. And if that's his choice, you need to respect it. Emma panicked at that suggestion. He has to forgive us. That's what Braden does. He always forgives me. Not this time, Dr. Williams said firmly. This time, Braden gets to decide what's best for Braden. After that session, Patricia called me for the first time without demanding that I come home. Her voice was small and broken as she asked if we could meet somewhere neutral, just to talk. She said she had things to apologize for and wanted to understand what they'd done wrong. I agreed to meet them at the coffee shop downtown, with Sarah there for moral support. When Patricia and Robert walked in, they looked like different people, older, sadder, but somehow more real than I'd ever seen them. Patricia had been crying, and Robert's hands were shaking as he sat down across from me. We need to tell you we're sorry, Patricia began, but we also need you to know that we understand why you might never forgive us. For the first time in my life, my parents listened to me without trying to fix, minimize, or redirect the conversation. They let me explain how invisible it felt, how much their favoritism had hurt, how betrayed it'd been by the college fund theft. They didn't interrupt or make excuses. They just listened. When I finished talking, Robert spoke up. We failed you as parents. We took your good nature and used it to make our lives easier instead of celebrating it and protecting it. We're sorry. Patricia had brought a check for the full amount they'd stolen from my college fund, plus interest. Shed sold Emma's expensive jewelry, electronics, and designer clothes to raise the money. This doesn't make it right, she said. But it's a start. They told me about Emma's therapy, about their own counseling sessions, about the changes they were trying to make. Emma was working a part-time job for the first time in her life, learning what it felt like to earn her own money. She'd been moved to a smaller bedroom and told that her college plans would depend on her own academic achievements, not family resources. But the biggest change was that they'd stopped enabling Emma's manipulation. When she tried to create a crisis to get attention, they calmly addressed the real issue instead of rushing to rescue her from natural consequences. She's not handling it well, Robert admitted, but Dr. Williams says this is necessary. They asked if I would consider rebuilding a relationship with them, but they made it clear that they understood if I wasn't ready or willing. For the first time, they were respecting my choice without trying to manipulate or pressure me. I told them I needed time to think about it. That evening, Sarah and I talked about whether family relationships could be repaired after such fundamental damage. I was surprised to find that I felt hopeful, not about going back to the way things were, but about the possibility of building something new and healthier. But I was also clear about my boundaries. Any relationship with my family would be on my terms, based on mutual respect, and never again would I be anyone's emotional caretaker or human safety net. 6 months later, I would discover that these changes had ripple effects none of us had anticipated. 6 months after Id quietly moved out and watched my family's perfect facade crumble, I was thriving in ways Id never imagined possible. Community college was challenging but rewarding. Id made dean's list both semesters while working 20 hours a week at the hardware store. Sarah and I had grown even closer, talking seriously about moving in together when she graduated high school next year. Id developed friendships based on mutual respect, rather than what I could do for other people. Most surprisingly, Id discovered talents Id never had space to explore when my energy was constantly drained by family obligations. Id joined the community college debate team and found I was good at public speaking. Id started a small side business helping elderly customers from the hardware store with home maintenance projects. Mr. Peterson had even begun training me on the business side of running a store, suggesting I might want to consider owning my own hardware store someday. My relationship with my family had slowly, carefully begun to rebuild on completely new terms. Patricia and Robert continued their therapy sessions and had made genuine changes in how they approached parenting Emma. More importantly, they'd learned to see me as an independent adult rather than as an extension of their family system. Emma's transformation had been the most dramatic of all. Individual therapy had been brutal for her as she faced the reality of her manipulative behaviors. She had been diagnosed with narcissistic personality traits and was working hard to develop empathy and genuine relationships. The part-time job at the local grocery store had taught her what real work felt like. Having to earn her own spending money had made her appreciate things she had previously taken for granted. Patricia and Robert had restructured their marriage too. Robert's construction business had stabilized after Head learned to set realistic expectations with clients. Patricia had gone back to work part-time as a substitute teacher, which gave her purpose beyond managing Emma's schedule. They'd discovered they actually liked each other when they weren't constantly stressed about money and Emma's latest crisis. The most healing moment came on my 19th birthday. Instead of an elaborate party, I chose to have a quiet dinner with Sarah, Marcus, Tyler, and Mr. Peterson at a local restaurant. To my surprise, Patricia, Robert, and Emma asked if they could join us, not to take over the celebration, but to participate as guests in something that was mine. Emma gave me a handwritten letter apologizing for specific things she'd done over the years. She didn't ask for forgiveness or try to minimize her actions. She just acknowledged the harm she'd caused and promised to continue working on becoming a better person. Shed used her own money to buy me a small gift, a vintage tool set Shed found at an antique shop, because Shed noticed my interest in learning home repair skills. Patricia and Robert's gift was more symbolic than expensive, a framed photo of me at 8 years old, winning a science fair competition. I'd forgotten about that achievement because it had been overshadowed by Emma's dance recital the same weekend. They'd kept the photo all these years, and now they wanted me to have it as a reminder that my accomplishments had always mattered, even when they'd failed to show it. The evening felt natural and comfortable in a way family gatherings never had before. Emma participated without dominating the conversation. Patricia and Robert asked genuine questions about my college plans and business ideas. For the first time, I felt like I was being seen as myself, rather than as a function in their family system. But the most meaningful change was in the boundaries we'd all learned to respect. When Emma mentioned feeling stressed about upcoming exams, I offered encouragement, but didn't automatically volunteer to help her study. When Patricia worried about managing the household schedule, I listened sympathetically but didn't jump in to solve her problems. They were learning to function as capable individuals, and I was learning that I could care about people without being responsible for their lives. Sarah held my hand under the table as I watched my family interact in this new, healthier way. She'd been part of my journey from invisible caretaker to independent adult, and she could see how much healing had taken place for everyone involved. After dinner, as we said our goodbyes in the parking lot, Robert pulled me aside. "I want you to know something," he said. Watching you stand up for yourself taught me how to be a better father. Not just to you, but to Emma too. She needed boundaries, not endless accommodation. You were braver than any of us. Patricia hugged me goodbye without asking when she'd see me again or trying to extract promises about future visits. She was learning to trust that our relationship would grow naturally if it was meant to, without pressure or manipulation. Emma surprised me most of all. As she was getting in the car, she turned back to me. "Braden," she said quietly, "I'm proud of you. I know I never said that before, but I should have. You deserve to be celebrated, not used." The growth in that statement took my breath away. 6 months ago, Emma couldn't even acknowledge that I had feelings separate from her needs. Now she was recognizing my worth and expressing genuine pride in my achievements. As I drove Sarah home that night, she asked me if I regretted leaving my family when I did. "Never," I said. "Leaving was the kindest thing I could have done for all of us. It forced everyone to grow." She was quiet for a moment. "Do you think you would have figured out how unhealthy things were if you'd stayed?" I considered that question seriously. Probably not. I was so used to being invisible that I thought it was normal. Sometimes you have to step outside a situation to see it clearly. Looking back, I realized that walking away from dysfunction was the most loving thing I could have done. Not just for myself, but for my family too. By removing myself as their safety net, it forced them to develop their own strength and face their own problems. By refusing to accept mistreatment, it'd shown them what healthy relationships should look like. Emma had to learn that manipulating people wasn't love, it was abuse. Patricia and Robert had to learn that playing favorites wasn't protecting their children, it was damaging them both. And I had to learn that I was worthy of respect and consideration, not because of what I did for others, but because of who I was. The quiet boy who'd once accepted scraps of attention while his sister received the feast had become a confident young man who knew his own worth. The family that had once operated on manipulation and favoritism had become a group of individuals learning to love each other in healthy ways. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from people you love, trusting that the space you create will give everyone room to become who they're meant to be. Sometimes loving people means refusing to enable their dysfunction, even when that refusal causes temporary pain. I learned that self-respect isn't selfish, setting boundaries isn't cruel, and sometimes the person who quietly removes themselves from a broken system is the one who gives everyone else the chance to heal. My family's perfect life had indeed fallen apart when I left, but what grew in its place was something none of us had experienced before. Genuine relationships based on mutual respect, individual growth, and authentic love, and that was worth every difficult moment of the journey. Now I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever been in a situation where you felt invisible or taken for granted in your own family? How did you handle it? Sometimes the hardest part is recognizing when we're being treated unfairly, especially by people we love. Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories about finding your worth and building healthy relationships. Don't forget to share this with anyone who might need to hear that they deserve better than being someone's backup plan. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, you are worthy of respect and consideration just as you are. I hope you find the courage to value yourself as much as you value others.